Hello there, I am Ross Tweddell from Cultaholic Wrestling, joined by Tom Campbell and Jack the Jobber, and we are back to answer yet another burning professional wrestling question. This time, who should have ended the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak? Now, this video could be 1 minute long, but that would not be the way of the YouTube. So we're going to set the table a bit here, lads. Tom, I'll come to you first. Does WrestleMania miss the streak match?
I miss it. I mean, it was like a title that got defended annually by the end, which was quite nice. But it all depended on the opponent. So, like, if there was Jeopardy there, you know, Orton, Shawn Michaels, Punk, then it was great. When there was no Jeopardy there, I'm looking at you, Big Show and A-Train at 19, Kane at 20, Mark Henry at 22, Triple H all the times, then...
Oh, I don't know.
It's interesting you mentioned Mark Henry as well. Mark Henry was one of those ones earmarked to end the bastard thing.
Which is weird, because, I mean, maybe that's probably why he would have been a good one to have, because I had no faith in him ending the streak. In a casket match at WrestleMania, no chance. So when there was like a true, like, oh, this could be the time, it was a really, really good bit of gripping stuff. But when there wasn't, it was just like kind of like a go through the motions type affair. Like we know the end game here, but I miss it personally.
I mention this because both Vince and Taker obviously had their doubts heading into WrestleMania, because the day of, Taker was going to win. He was going to win that match against Brock Lesnar and the streak would live on. Vince then changed his mind the morning of, and then Taker apparently in the minutes and the hours before the match repeatedly said to Vince, is this what you want? Are you sure this is what you want? This is basically like a title match, having the streak match every year, just as you said. Jack, do you miss it?
Yes, I do as well, but I think it's an unavoidable thing. I think that we all knew that The Undertaker slowed down quite a lot in his later years. Like, obviously, he carried on going at a high level longer than you'd ever expect him to. But I do miss it as well. As you say, it's almost like a title itself. Often it was the biggest match on the show, but I think it's just one of those unavoidable things. Like, the older he got, I think it would have just got... Had he beaten Brock Lesnar at 30, I think it would have maybe got less and less a highlight of the show. The tension would have still been there, but I don't think the quality would have been.
If we were sat here in 2017, just after that Roman Reigns one, I'd be thinking, good riddance. The streak's had its day. It's time to end. But he got himself back on track, didn't he? I thought towards the end.
Because it was it the following year where he had the bit with John Cena, where it was like Cena calling him out all night, and then Cena went and sat in the crowd.
After the Roman one?
Yeah, that was 34.
Yeah.
So, and that felt like a bit of a return to form for The Undertaker after that, which I really enjoyed.
Saudi Arabia doesn't count. Saudi Arabia does not count.
For all its flaws, it might have just been because me and Ross were there live, but the Shane one was entertaining in a weird way as well. The one against Bray Wyatt felt more like ceremonial rather than... It was like The Undertaker's still here. The streak's gone, but he's still here.
Yeah.
But he did get himself a little bit back on track. The Roman match wasn't great, but...
Yeah. Is there a case... Go on then. Go on then. Yes.
Bless you.
Thank you. All the best. Is there a case to be made for the streak never ending? Jack? Keep you on your toes, Tom. Keep you on your toes.
Took a big inhale to go.
Tom, asking
Jack's streak is sneezes today. The sneeze is over.
Do you want to answer it or should I answer it now?
Do you want to go?
I'll risk it. I'll risk it.
You bought your time with the sneeze.
I think that there's definitely a case to be made that it should never have ended, but I think the argument would have only gotten a lot stronger as he went on and as his ability declined, that it should have been ended. And every year, I think people would, like you were saying, people would be thinking by the Roman match, come on, when's this realistically going to end? But I think there's a lot of variables around that question, which we're going to get into, like possible candidates for it or a matter of timing. So there is a case that it should have lived on forever. I feel like these days, the sentiment about the streak ending is not nearly as bad as it was in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah.
Then everyone was devastated. Now I think people might reflect on it a little bit better.
Tom?
If this was a company that still booked long term and still had like a 5-year plan in place, like in history sometimes it has, then absolutely it's a case of picking the right person who can really grow from that win. But this isn't that company anymore. So for me, I say let him bow out with it, because I don't see them truly committing to anybody long term, because the way that WWE is now done, in the sense of, you're not selling a wrestler or a particular match, you're selling a name above a marquee, which is WWE. So there's nothing to gain from getting rid of it. So I'd have, with that in mind, let him bow out with it. Let him retire undefeated at WrestleMania, and then have him pop up every so often.
I was of the school of thought that the streak ending should have been his retirement match as soon as because obviously Undertaker's an old fella, talks about the guns and the cocaine and the not video games and stuff like that. He loves all that, doesn't he?
When men were men, etc.
Yeah, like all that sort of stuff. He loves the traditions of professional wrestling, and traditionally you lose your final match on your way out, putting over the next guy who'll carry the wheels forward, keep them turning, like that song from Motown.
Nice.
I forgot who did.
Long train.
Oh, big was Proud Mary.
Aye,
Proud Mary. Yeah.
Aye, that one, just like that. But I was listening to a
He walks
Jim.
up the ramp to that. I remember.
Rolling on the river.
That was such a happy ending. And it was in New Orleans, it all fit. It was great.
I was listening to a Jim Ross podcast from immediately after WrestleMania 30, where he put forward the case that it should never have ended the streak. This is saying that Taker. This is him fantasy booking, which obviously goes against everything Triple H said. You just get what you're given, Jim, and you enjoy it. You idiot. He said Taker would have won the Rumble whatever year the streak ends. Whatever year he retires. Taker wins the Rumble. He then wins the title, and he pitched John Cena. He wins the title from John Cena at the WrestleMania, and because John Cena would turn heel during that match, Taker would come back on the Raw after WrestleMania and then retire, saying, "I've done everything now. It's all over."
Oh, with the belt and
with
drops
the belt, just
right.
retire the belt, leave it vacant, and then go off into the sunset on his merry way. And I thought that was quite nice, but then I thought, no, traditions, cocaine, knives.
That's a very interesting one. I think it would work for shock value because no one would be expecting that, especially if there were rumors swirling that Taker was going to retire as well. I think. Bryan Danielson did it in PWG just before he went to WWE. I think he had a title match which everyone expected him to lose because everyone knew he was on his way to WWE. Then won it and then immediately retired it. But I think that's reflected on quite well. I think people like that.
Yeah.
But I think the match was really good, which helps.
Let's look at the other candidates who it could have been in 2014's WWE to end the streak, because obviously one of the big arguments is people saying, if not Brock Lesnar in 2014, then when the bloody hell are we going to do it, lads? I think that's what Vince McMahon said to Undertaker, according to the dirty sheets in the build-up to WrestleMania 30 on the day of course. Brock Lesnar, him or anybody else? What are you saying, Tom?
I don't think there's one other person who I think should have done it, but I don't know whether we're going to touch on who we think should have ended the streak a little later on. So I kind of want to hold my
we'll say our picks at the end of the video.
Later. But I think you end it, if you end it, when you know you have somebody to throw the world behind to carry that on. Brock Lesnar, whilst it was whoever would have beat him would have been a shocking moment. But did Brock Lesnar's aura truly grow from doing it? Did he need it?
Yeah.
No, he still battered Cena at SummerSlam, and it would have still been as compelling a moment had he not. Had he not beat Undertaker? We got some good Paul Heyman promos out of it.
Oh, 100%. Well, I think that the whole Lesnar thing has kind of worked out in WWE's favor now after a bit of a gap, almost by accident. I doubt this is the way. Well, it's not the way they had designs on Lesnar carrying that momentum forwards. It was all going to be a bit different. Lesnar obviously, I think, briefly went back to MMA and then came back again. And I think nowadays it does help because you've got this monster, and every so often they can make a reference like, this is the guy who ended the streak, and it just adds to his whole thing. But that's a total accident, I think. I think had it panned out the way they wanted it to pan out, I don't know if it would have worked out as well as it has just by chance.
Just to play the devil's advocate, did Brock Lesnar need this win after losing to Triple H?
Oh, wow.
Gotta keep Brock strong, brother.
I was going to say no, and then when you said after losing in Triple H, I was like, oh, he did the year before.
That was a thing that happens. He can't beat Undertaker.
No.
He can't beat Triple H, but he can beat The Undertaker.
That's like rock, paper, scissors.
It really is, isn't it?
I think no. Because Lesnar's one of those, he's one of those guys, isn't he?
Because it never occurred to me that his aura was damaged until you mentioned, he lost Triple H to WrestleMania before.
But we had to be reminded of that.
It hadn't occurred to me because since then he's just he's the final boss of wrestling, and I don't think that would have changed had he lost to The Undertaker at 30.
Yeah. I am that Vince McMahon t-shirt they've just released with the devil on. I'm playing devil's advocate a lot.
Good. I'm glad you're playing devil's avocado.
This match was actually set up in an angle at UFC 121, Richard. Do you remember it well?
Man.
Do you remember it well?
Yes.
He loves it, doesn't he, Richard? UFC.
You want to go?
Aye. Yes, I do.
To the shops?
This was actually, I didn't realise what a gap it was. October 2010 is when UFC 121 happened. Cross promotion that obviously Brock Lesnar could provide, and no one else really at that time could have provided back in 2014 when you look at the roster. Taker said that entire thing was just done, and I quote, to start a buzz, because he had no idea if Brock Lesnar was coming back to WWE at the time. Dana White said no at the time, and that's why it took like 3.5, 4 years for it to happen. So cross promotion. Who else could have offered that sort of thing, Tom?
Oh, instead of Brock Lesnar?
Yeah, just look at the options here. Look at all the variables.
Cena.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could have, if you were going to do some sort of cross-promoting thing, like a big name like John Cena could
He was
have done
busy
it at
with Bray
WrestleMania
Wyatt, though,
30.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, would you do something like that with Daniel Bryan? Like, he was white hot at the time.
He was busy with someone else.
He was busy as well, yeah.
3 more men.
Oh, gosh.
Too many men. Too many men.
But I don't think we're saying that the match between Undertaker and Lesnar shouldn't have happened. You know, the whole, like, you want to go and all that, and it builds to it. I'm just calling into question, should Brock have beaten him? Should Brock have been the guy that beaten him? Does any harm get done? Because Brock's already beaten Undertaker multiple times in the run-up to this match, lest we forget. Like 2002, 2003.
But not the streak, not the streak.
But not the streak. But he's beaten him plenty of times. Just not the streak, admittedly. So I think in terms of an opponent for WrestleMania 30 for The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar's a great choice.
Yeah.
Did Brock have to win, though? I don't think so.
No,
Especially when you look ahead after that. And I remember being furious a couple of years later, or not furious, just confused when Goldberg squashed Lesnar. Because I was like, well, this is the guy who's in theory got all the momentum from beating the streak. And then Goldberg comes along and squashes him. And I was like, at the time, it made no sense. I sort of calmed down about it when Lesnar beat him back at the following WrestleMania, beat Goldberg back. But it did seem like the lineage of the man who beat the streak just got really distorted. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but you're wrong for thinking that way.
Why?
And a demon called Aizu told me this.
Okay.
Because they created headlines, didn't they? Headlines that wouldn't have been there if Goldberg didn't squash Lesnar
Well,
like he
I
did.
think that's part of the argument of the moments versus continuity argument.
Yeah.
Do you care
Yeah.
more about big moments or do you care more about long-term
And that's a
storylines?
different video altogether.
It is.
Shall I throw some names at you from 2014's roster and there and thereabouts and just give me
Go on.
would you like the sort of the prospect of this person ending the streak, or would you not like it?
Okay.
Okay, go for it.
So bear in mind 2014, this Roman Reigns.
Yes.
He was white
Yes,
hot then.
yes.
A big old bruising baby face, so he was. Dean Ambrose.
Yes, because he was like the mastermind of the Shield. I'd like it if he did it in a slightly devious way, possibly,
Yeah.
rather than just beating him by being tougher.
I think it was too soon for this fella, just about. But Seth Rollins, I think it was just a bit too soon for him.
Bit too
Slightly.
soon.
Rusev, who of course made his
Yeah.
debut at the Rumble, then went away for a bit and then came back after this WrestleMania.
I mean,
Why not, eh?
Imagine that. You're not biased at all. But
that'd have been cool.
I'd
but-
almost, looking at Rusev now or Miro, that character
Oh, yeah.
could have beaten The Undertaker. I'm not sure about Rusev.
With God on his side. The Celtic Warrior.
No.
Sheamus.
Sorry,
Love
Sheamus.
Sheamus, but
Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. Here
no,
he
not
comes.
then. Not then.
Luke
No.
Harper. I thought it was quite an interesting one because obviously he was on the periphery of the John Cena versus Bray Wyatt thing at WrestleMania.
No, all good matches Taker could have, but like
If you build,
no.
if they got behind Luke Harper and built him up, then eventually, but maybe not then.
Shame on him for being well spoken. Eh? That was the
I know.
famous thing from Vince
Should
McMahon.
have-
He
should have had
said- sounded like a hillbilly, but
Dirty
he
accent.
didn't. Hulk Hogan.
Oh,
yes,
no.
And finally,
and then he hot dogs and grandstands for 7 hours afterwards. No,
I'll just throw that one in there. Yes, I think, yeah. So we've just about decided that Lesnar was the one to do it, if anyone was going to do it.
if you absolutely had to do it, but then this is what I mean about.
But I've got another name I want to say at the
Go on,
end,
then.
or a couple.
At the
Same till the end. Same till the end.
Yeah,
same
I
till the
think-
morning
yeah,
afternoon. But then if you absolutely had to end the streak there and then, like we have to end it now, like then yeah, probably Lesnar. But then why do you have to, like, again, like unless you know there's somebody that you've got in your mind's eye, like just bide your time because Undertaker's going to keep coming back and wrestling for another 5 years. So if you know he's got another 5 matches in him, hold on. But then again, WWE don't book that way anymore, and that's not a dig. They just don't. It's a very different presentation these days to the one that I grew up in. Is it right? Is it wrong? Everyone likes different things. But yeah, Brock Lesnar was probably the best, the most interesting opponent, the most potential challenge to the streak. Doesn't mean you had to end it.
Yeah. Now we go to the match itself because obviously Undertaker suffered that massive concussion. Nobody's really pinpointed when exactly it happened, but many are speculating. Well, this mainly comes from Meltzer, but Jim Ross and Jim Cornette, I listened to a thing where they said this as well. There's a double leg spot on the floor and Taker just sort of falls back and twats his head on the floor. He was knocked out then, but he could still kick out when he was supposed to. Should the match, I'm saying maybe, should they have called an audible? during this matchup. If Taker was clearly out of it and couldn't really hold up his side of the bargain, as he might have done if he wasn't concussed, should it have gone on in a different way? Maybe come back, circle back to this in years later.
Oh, so what you think? Like instead
end
of
the matter.
just
somehow get out of it with Taker winning. Because I think that was a lot of the upset and uproar was how it went down with the multiple F5s.
Especially the footage of him staggering up the ramp, and
they weren't happy with how Taker went out that night.
I don't think Mark Calloway, the man, after being told you're losing, would have been like, "Oh, I don't feel well." He would have been like, "Crack on, boy! Like, just let's get it done. Let's get over it. Crack on, boy!" Undertaker's famous catchphrase, "Crack on, boy!"
I think
it's just an unfortunate accident of the night.
yes, and I think separating this point entirely from, like, obviously the priority should always be safety, and you don't want the Undertaker to get seriously hurt during this, but in an accidental way, I think the way the match goes almost adds to the legacy of it. Like, Taker's really beaten up, and when Lesnar just like hoists him up for that final F5, and you think, wow, like and Taker's, I remember, isn't he like clearly in some discomfort as well? Like he
collapses when he gets back through the curtain,
and obviously that's not a good thing.
No,
but almost as a sort of byproduct of all that, it adds to the whole thing. Like I think that it is effective, even though you'd rather avoid it if you could.
I'm out that school of thought as well. Just thought I'd put the question.
Well, it added to the shock because, I mean, obviously hindsight being 2020, we all know now he was injured. I remember watching the match with my housemate at the time and going, "This match is rubbish."
It wasn't a brilliant
It was an
match.
awful match. So when the 3 went down, we both went, "What?"
Yeah.
Because it was like, this has been an awful match, and all of a sudden, yes, I'm very awake because Undertaker's just lost.
Yeah.
So it certainly added to it because the match was a bit crap.
It was a bit,
But we know why,
I
because he's
think-
blooming concussed.
Well, and also I think in comparison to the streak of amazing matches he'd had in the years prior.
Yeah, he'd been on a bit of a tear.
So we've looked at the 2014 roster and the candidates who could have been the one instead of Brock Lesnar. Now we'll look at the streak combatants before Lesnar who were earmarked as people to potentially end the streak. I've done some digging on the dirty sheets. Court Bauer said back in 2005 Randy Orton was approached but turned it down because he thought he hadn't earned it at that WrestleMania match.
I see what you did then. I think Orton. I think if you're going to end it, I think Orton would have been somebody who'd
That
on
was
my
the
list.
one for me. That was the first one as
Yeah.
well where you thought bloody because obviously it was made a thing, sort of officially but unofficially. It was made a thing at WrestleMania 18.
Yeah,
When
that
he
was
starts
it,
going
yeah.
"Woo," with his fingers on the apron after beating Ric Flair. This was the first match after that where I thought, oh my god, he's actually going to lose here.
Well, it was the first time that the streak kind of became a focal point because it was the Legend Killer going after the Legend of the Undertaker streak.
It would have really made sense for Orton in that time, but
Yeah.
but I'm glad it didn't happen because after the Orton one is kind of when it took off.
Yeah.
Or after the Mark Henry one. Batista's the first one I think of when I think of the run of amazing matches. But if Orton had beaten him then, it would have been great, but we wouldn't have got the Michaels matches and stuff.
Speaking of Henry, Tom's obviously on board with Mark Henry ending the streak. He said that earlier. Jack, were you on board with Mark Henry ending it at WrestleMania 22?
I don't think so. I think that one to me, I wasn't watching wrestling at the time, but so I'm probably not the right person to ask because I didn't have the full context of it. But looking back, to me, that seems like a classic, like Hulk Hogan storyline. Like here comes this big bad guy who's putting him in serious danger, but he'll overcome it in the end.
That's pretty much what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Pretty much what it was.
Instead of Mark Henry at that WrestleMania, apparently Undertaker approached Kurt Angle in the months beforehand saying, I want a five-star match at WrestleMania. Kurt Angle, you're the fella to give me that. So maybe at WrestleMania 22, Kurt Angle could have been the one to end the streak. Thoughts on that one? At 22, the wrestling machine.
No.
ability-wise, 100%, but character-wise, I don't know if it fits. I think he could have had an excellent match with Angle, and
Yeah.
I'm sad we never got to see that.
Oh, we
But
did it No Way Out 2006. That was
Mania, a streak
Mania,
match with
yeah.
Angle. But Undertaker should have brought back the Godfather's pants that he had to wear for that Attitude Era match with
He's
Angle.
debunked that, hasn't he? The Godfather. They weren't actually
were
his
his pants?
No,
Oh,
I don't know
fair
where they
enough.
were from, but they
I think
weren't his.
Undertaker genuinely bought them, thinking these look snazzy. And he was so embarrassed that everybody went, what are you wearing? He went, oh, the Godfathers.
So
And I think that's where it started.
I think in ring that it would have worked, but I think the whole package doesn't work. I don't think.
Still
Angle's
talking about the
right-
snazzy leather pants.
Yeah. In ring, it looked great. Not outside of it.
Tom, Kurt Angle.
Again, Angle not a, like, whilst it would have been a match that would have been in the Streak Jeopardy list for me. Like Angle, the idea of Angle like putting Undertaker in an ankle lock for like 15 minutes to try and get him to tap and Undertaker refusing to go. Like, yeah, real Jeopardy.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have needed it. I think Undertaker beat him.
Bruce Pritchard mentioned this name a number of times apparently over the years it was mentioned. Just not really put in ironclad, but sort of just mooted from time to time. John Cena. Now I think that one needed to coincide with the Cena heel turn. Later on in the streak, Cena does something dastardly to end the streak. I think that would have been fantastic.
If you were going to do it, you'd have Cena start as a face and then throughout the match, a bit like Austin at Mania 17.
Yeah.
Have just like Cena get darker and darker and darker, and then have to do something really dastardly to beat him, and then you've got heel Cena. If you were going to do it, that gives something to boost off. But again,
Only if it was a heel turn.
only if it was a heel turn, and it led to something like a dawn of a new era.
Remember that the match when Sami Zayn beat Neville to become the NXT champion. If Cena had that moment where the referee's down, he's like, but instead of doing what Sami does, he goes, and just hits him. I think that would have been really good.
Edge has noted numerous times on the Pod of Awesomeness back in those days that he turned down the chance to beat the streak because obviously Taker liked working with him so much famously. So Edge, I would have liked that personally.
That's
I
a good
like the way it went with Edge learning counters to all of the moves and everything.
So Taker had to get out the, what was it, Hell's Gate for the first time?
Is that the match with Charles Robinson?
Yeah.
Did that 400-meter sprint down the
so,
class?
I think that on that particular night, like it was the right way to end the story with Edge losing. Like that was the nice way to, on that particular night. But Edge in general ending the streak, I'm fine with. I think he's somebody that maybe a year before as well would have been something that would have really just added that little bit of extra fuel to his fire. But in that particular Mania match that they had, I think it was right that Edge lost because it was a nice way to end a story.
Now, I can see you've got the full list there. If you had to pick anybody to end the streak who wasn't Brock Lesnar, are you picking anybody?
From this list?
From the people who've already...
Well, King Kong Bundy, obviously, from WrestleMania 11.
From the streak
from
before
the people who've
Lesnar,
already...
Well, it's, again, my eyes are always drawn to Orton. My eyes are
Fair
always drawn to Orton or Giant Gonzalez. No, it's
He got the closest in a way.
Yeah.
he
It
really
kinda
did.
did.
Got DQ because it's at one point
Yeah.
DQ.
Yeah.
That could have been a very different world. I think from that list personally, and he's a name I'm going to mention probably a few more times, is Orton. I think everybody else there is either like they don't need it, or it was a story that resulted in them getting their comeuppance, so they had to lose. So
Orton is the one for me out of all of them, if anyone had to.
My one is probably Punk, but I think just because of on the strength of the feud and how different a faux Punk was for Undertaker. But looking at the way then Punk's WWE run subsequently panned out, I'm glad it didn't happen. But yeah, I think if someone's going to be Undertaker, like Orton and like Cena if he turned heel, you want someone who can really milk it on the mic afterwards, and Punk would have been the best at that. But yeah,
Orton could do that.
Orton could do that.
Bleeding everywhere, be
And,
fantastic.
and heel Cena could do that. And I think Punk, that's probably the big reason I think Punk would have worked, but I'm glad it didn't happen.
Giant Gonzalez could have as well.
Yes.
Did he have a cut promo?
Harvey Wiverman cut promos on his behalf.
Get Harvey in.
All we heard was that would have done. Right, should we ask ourselves the question, was everything that happened after the streak ending making the streak ending worth it, if that makes any sense to you whatsoever? I realised I just didn't speak English very well there, did I?
So
did everything that happened after the streak ended make the streak ending worth it?
Right. Everything.
I'm going Taker returning a battleground during the match between Lesnar and Rollins, and then we're setting ourselves off to SummerSlam 2015. That's when the Taker and Lesnar laughed at each other for that memeable moment. The Hell in a Cell match. Then we go on to, obviously, as Jack mentioned earlier, the Goldberg beating Lesnar, Lesnar beating Goldberg, and everything Lesnar's done ever since. Was the streak ending, in hindsight, worth it?
Yes. I'm going to say yes, eventually. So throughout all those twists and turns that you mentioned, I was probably thinking at the time, no, it wasn't worth it at all. It's easier to look at it that way as well when Taker can still go in the ring. But as he got older and his ability declined, and as these things happened, it's like the pieces accidentally fell into place. And now, looking at where Lesnar is now, yes, it was worth it, but it was a bit of a convoluted route to get there.
Tom?
No. No,
you cheeky boy.
No, but in terms of the immediate aftermath, we had some great promos by Heyman of him just coming out and reiterating my client beat the
Cesaro
streak.
got a role
No,
for
yeah.
a month or so.
Cesaro was meant to be attached to the rocket, but instead it was like a limpet being attached to a blue whale. It was just like, and that's no disrespect to Cesaro, because Cesaro's great, but it was such a half-hearted, half-witted way of kind of come get some of this heat near you.
Well, no, Heyman
come get your feet in the fire.
We went to a live talk with Paul Heyman, which we'll get onto a bit more in a little bit, where he was saying the only reason he was put with Cesaro is that Paul Heyman could stay on TV with someone attached to him so he could speak about the streak ending. That was the only reason Cesaro was attached to him.
But surely Paul Heyman could have come and done that anyway.
He could have, yeah.
Didn't need, like, Cesaro was almost like, I think he was meant to help Cesaro. I feel like it hindered Cesaro. And it just sort of shone a light on how inconsistent he was. But then, like, again, I know you said, like, afterwards, obviously, Brock Lesnar would go on to become the final boss. But I think he would have got there anyway, regardless of whether he'd beaten The Undertaker or not. So I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it is.
I'm the same as you. I don't think it was worth it at all. Look at what came afterwards. I know it really added to Brock Lesnar's lure, but he didn't need it. And what happened afterwards didn't really build on that at all, I didn't think.
No, it didn't.
It gave us a couple of months of decent promos from Heyman. But Heyman's always a good promo. So if it had Brock not beat Undertaker, had Brock lost to Undertaker, Heyman would have still been a great promo.
We got a meme, though. Shocked face man.
Yeah. He's made bank.
He's made a career off it. Fair play to him.
Good for So do you know what? I'm sure he's glad that the streak ended. So good on you. Must get you on Desert Island Graps sometime.
I feel like also another factor relevant to this question is had Undertaker like retired then it would have been more effective. But when you see Undertaker still hanging around and feuding with the guy who beat him and then going on to have these matches with Shane McMahon at WrestleMania, that didn't help either, I think.
No. And the storylines as well. We've got to say about the storylines not really making sense. That didn't help things at all. For Undertaker's sake, I'm saying here.
No.
The lockbox at WrestleMania.
The lockbox, right, yeah.
That didn't make... Shane had to win that match to take over Raw, but he lost that match
Shane
and
was
took
never
over Raw
going
anyway.
to Taker at Mania. Yeah,
I just thought what came after it for Taker, it could have been a lot better. And I'm sat here saying it could be a lot better with no suggestions of my own. Would you agree with that, Tom?
It could have just been, if you were going to do it, then that's the end of The Undertaker. Like, draw a line under that. That's it. And you'll make probably the odd shock appearance here and there, but that's it. You certainly don't put him in any programs ever again. You don't put him in any matches ever again. If you're going to do it, then you'd finish him there. But I don't think they'd want to do that to The Undertaker, which is why you don't end the streak.
We mentioned Paul Heyman just before there, and I don't know whether we should give this any airtime, but me and Jack were at a talk with Paul Heyman.
I've watched this on YouTube. It was
a conspiracy theory put forward by Paul Heyman. Well, it was more of a dangling carrot for the people in attendance, where he basically said, how do you know there was a creative process that went into the WrestleMania 30 match where Brock Lesnar ended the streak? How did you know, dear viewer, that Lesnar just didn't go into business for himself? Lesnar concussed Taker on purpose so he could then pin Undertaker and Taker could do nothing about it, therefore meaning Brock Lesnar would end the streak. And because Brock Lesnar ended the streak, WWE couldn't fire him for going into business for himself. Do we give this any airtime?
Stop him. Nah, it's Heyman being Heyman. I can't be mad. I like how Paul Heyman can pull out the minutia and make it into the maximize.
Yes, a guy in the crowd got so upset he got thrown out. He kept heckling him. He kept saying like, "No, honestly, it was Heyman," and you could tell like. It was one of Kenny's things. And obviously, Kenny was annoyed because this guy was disrupting the show. You could tell Heyman was delighted. What
was the guy shouting? Like, you beat the Undertaker.
Well, it was in Glasgow, so I couldn't really understand.
No. And that's just cancelled in Scotland.
That happened years ago. It was just like the Giant Gonzalez cutting a promo. All you could hear was just like, and then Paul Heyman going, sit down.
Yeah.
And saying other things that were better than that.
Yeah.
I don't believe Paul Heyman at all, but it was nice to hear him say it.
It was interesting.
He never said that's what happened. He just planted the seed, didn't he?
Chance, yeah.
Yeah,
he planted the seed.
Basically did. So he's like, yeah, it was funny. It was a funny moment.
It was good. He's like, there's only three or four people who knew what happened. There was him, Vince, Brock, and maybe one other.
Oh yeah, the music guy didn't know.
The music guy. Because that was another thing that added to this conspiracy, the fact that the music and the graphic took so long to happen. But I think that was by design.
Yeah, the ref didn't know either.
Imagine being that.
Oh my god, I couldn't. I'd have palpitations. I couldn't do that.
I think I would have accidentally.
Are we sure?
I think I don't understand why.
Cutting the blue wire.
Why wouldn't you just tell the ref? Because I would have accidentally not counted 3. I think I'd have pulled out and gone, whoa, hang on.
I know they're worried about like rumor getting out, but literally as the ref's about to go out, just say Taker's losing.
Yeah.
You sure? Did you hear it right that Taker's losing? Taker's losing. Okay, cool, fine.
Who was the ref,
in
Richard?
it. Was it Kyoto?
Could you Google a quick
I'm
picture?
gonna guess Kyoto.
Imagine if Kyoto went back. I would have played a prank. Kyoto come back and they go, "What have you done? He was meant to kick out."
Could you imagine being told if you were the ref, the Taker's losing his streak, just as you were walking out the ramp and you just fell, just rolled up, fainted and fell. It was that match. Chad, is that Chad Patton?
I don't know.
Whoever that is.
Yeah, well, whoever
one of
the
those
ref
modern
was
referees.
the ref.
It's not Charles. It's not Mike.
It wasn't Kyoto. Wow.
But that was a terrifying thing to have to do.
Yeah.
So, especially if you didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, so
I know they always say like if the wrestlers don't kick out, that's on them. Like the amount of times we've seen like count outs and DQs and stuff because the wrestlers haven't like followed the rules they have to stringently follow in a planned match. I know they say it's on them, but still, that'd be a big one to get wrong.
I thought it was fantastic how they delayed the music and just let the atmosphere just sit there and the shock resonate through the TV screen.
I had a lovely chat with Tom Hannafin, formerly Tom Phillips of Raw. He's on Desert Island Gramps this week.
Oh, is he?
And we talked about the streak thing in there and how the power of silence from commentary is incredible. And how Michael Cole, one of the best calls he ever did was go, the streak 3 is over.
Yeah.
And then say nothing. Commentary is so powerful when you're quiet. And I think that's brilliant. And that was some of the best stuff because they let the moment just happen.
It was better than For the Love of Mankind, for example.
Yeah.
For the love of mankind.
No.
How can that happen? How can the silence after the streak ending happen, then that thing happen?
I think because in those years,
I don't think it's Cole's fault. I think he's been micromanaged to say For the Love of Mankind.
But if there are people micromanaging them, it's still how does it happen?
Oh, yeah.
How can they go from one extreme to the
Because WWE are silly sometimes.
Yeah.
I guess.
Aye. So we'll just say Paul Heyman was just wasting his breath, shall we?
He was just being Paul Heyman.
I'll remember it.
It
It was a funny little moment.
It was. Now we'll get to the juicy bit.
Ooh.
We'll bring forward our candidates. If we're saying it had to end at any point, who was the person that ended? Tom, we'll go to you first.
Okay, Randy Orton. I think Randy Orton definitely. My other candidate, Roman Reigns.
2014.
2014, because the Shield attacked Undertaker the night after Mania, the SmackDown after Mania 2013.
Yeah.
There's your setup, and you have them, and it's not when Roman is. They haven't tried to do the suffering succotash good guy thing yet with Roman, so he's still just like this monster bad guy that people actually go, oh, he's quite good.
He's in the Diesel bit. He had the same the Diesel 94, Reigns 2014, the Rumble, just dismantling of the entire roster was incredible to watch.
And that was it. And
Did he limit a million people that much?
People loved it, but at least a million. And people loved it. But also he was a baddie. So I think putting him in that match, I think when he was a bit younger, when Taker was a bit younger, you do it then and you give that to Roman. And then from there, Roman Reigns becomes the star that he became anyway. But you can skip out a lot of that attempts to become a top babyface nonsense and just immediately have that. And then the night after, have him come out on Raw, do This Is My Yard Now. Because he didn't speak very often at that point either. So that This Is My Yard Now promo, which he did after beating Undertaker at Mania a few years
33,
later, 33, was great because it was just booze and booze and booze and booze and booze. This is my yard now. Drop the mic. Have him do that after WrestleMania 30. You've got top heel. Yeah. Straight off the bat.
And we could have saved ourselves of years of just having that man forced down our goddamn throat.
Make him the cool bad guy that defeated the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Jack?
Mine was originally Punk, which I mentioned before, but for two reasons I'll change it. One's because, as I said, the way the Punk, then went in WWE, I personally wouldn't change it because then even though it was horrible for him at the time, he's on this amazing run now, and I wouldn't want to trade in Punk's amazing run now for a slightly better streak ending. And also because you've both convinced me, I think you're right. I think Roman is the probably the best candidate. I don't agree with the Orton one because for me that came too soon, and you'll miss out on like the amazing Michaels feud and the Triple H matches and everything. So I think Roman, because it came after all that, and would have been a good use of the momentum of the streak ending. I'm going to agree with you.
Would you
as long as he turned heel immediately, like
he's got to be.
You can't have him try and be a cool guy still. He's got to be a cool heel. But yeah,
Vince has got to sort of bite his tongue on going and Diesel-fying him from WWF 1995.
and Diesel. He should have beaten him.
Diesel should have been WrestleMania 12. That should have
Yeah.
been the one. Would you have accepted a Randy Orton beating The Undertaker a few years after? Say, instead of Triple H fighting him at WrestleMania 27, you have Randy Orton fighting at WrestleMania
Possibly.
27.
I like those Triple H matches, especially the Cell one, because that near fall after the super kick and then the pedigree is like the best near fall in the streak for me. But yeah, I probably would have accepted that as long as it came
that
after
was
the
28,
Michael.
though, that one, wasn't it?
That one was 28.
Yeah.
But if this came at 27 instead of the Triple H,
False count anywhere thing.
yeah, then I probably would. Yeah, probably. I'd take not having those two Triple H matches for Orton. Yeah.
But I definitely think maybe Orton, maybe the only thing I think of there, maybe Orton might be a little bit further down the line, but because I genuinely think the streak, if you're going to give it to somebody who you're going to push for years to come, and it can be their little badge of honor that pushes them over the top, that straps the rocket to them. That's what it's all about. That's what it should have always been about.
Yeah.
And if there's nobody, then don't have him lose.
Amen,
Retire.
sister.
Have him retire.
Clicking.
I'm not. As I say, I still think accidentally it's worked out all right with Brock. But I totally get your point of view that it might have been better just to have him retire with the streak intact. Yeah, it's lucky that Brock is such a freak and has carried on for so long and done so well. But yeah,
What if it was Cowboy Brock?
no,
2014.
no, I think that would have been worse.
See now you say that beating Undertaker with a car door. I'm here for that. That's fine.
Rips it off the hearse at the top of the ramp.
Yes.
Surfs it down the ramp. Hits him on the head.
We never said JBL in all of this.
Oh.
We still won't.
That was a good feud, though. I enjoyed JBL versus Undertaker.
It was good.
JBL's good at being scared.
Yeah.
The boogeyman as well. Yeah,
The boogeyman.
that's how we ended with the
Should have been his last match. We'll just end this. I think it should have, personally. The streak ending should have been Taker's retirement match, and he goes off, and we never, ever hear from him again. Interviews, nothing.
I think you still have him making appearances, like at special occasions, little run-ins and stuff. I don't think you have him wrestle again. I think because I like the idea of him doing that, but then Cena still doing the whole, like going on to Raw, SmackDown, Sunday Night Heat, the Discovery Channel, Good Morning Britain, and just calling out The Undertaker at every opportunity. And then have Undertaker come out not for a match, but just to clatter him, then go home again. Like, I like Undertaker making appearances like that, but don't put him in a match again and then do the retirement thing and then put him in the Hall of Fame like they're doing. But I don't think wrestle again after that.
I think it should have been maybe his third last match. Then he gets like a win, not over the guy who's beaten him, but he gets a win at like SummerSlam over another big opponent who to make everyone happy again. Like say he's all right,
okay.
and then loses his final match at Survivor Series just to bring that to a nice, because that's where he debuted.
Nice. I like that, actually.
Yeah, so I would have maybe not his last match, but close to.
So maybe what we do is then, like we're doing it. You have him lose, and then the SummerSlam he wins, and then at Survivor Series he loses, and then he does the thing where he like takes off his hat, his coat, his trousers, leaves them in the ring.
I thought someone just broke in the other room. But yeah, no, yeah.
And then disappears like underneath the ring, like he did it. Bye everybody, like he did that match against Roman. Yeah. Bye everybody. Do that there, his last match.
I think
then
so.
we don't see him till like the Hall of Fame or a run-in or something.
Yeah, we can do occasional things, but
You're both wrong.
Okay.
you
Reigns
never
ends
see
the
him
streak
again.
in 2014, and after he's just laying there in the ring, we visibly see his spirit leave and then float away to the
Marty
top of the
Jannetty
ring.
to play his spirit again.
Exactly.
Like the old
That's
days.
exactly what I'm thinking, Tom. There we have it then. Multiple questions on the road to finding out who should have ended the Undertaker streak. And as a threesome, we are undecided, but we all have our own opinions, and that's what makes the world go around.
Yeah, it does. Although I changed mine because I thought you two were right.
Oh.
So Roman Reigns should have.
Maybe we are in agreement.
We're
then.
all decided, and that's what makes the world go round.
Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Tell us how wrong we are. I have been Ross Tweddell, joined by Tom Campbell and Jack the Jobber. Thank you, Undertaker, for doing the wrestling for that long. It's been good, See you.
That'll be his Hall of Fame speech. Been good. See ya.